Who teaches and who learns? The reason I want to ask that question is that there's this kind of phenomenon or kind of situation that I've been thinking about recently, mostly because it's been pointed out and highlighted in discussion around games that I play. And it actually does have some real life applications as well as storytelling applications. But focusing on the game part is kind of where it kind of really clicks in a sense, at least for me. Because it can be kind of weird hearing that someone is struggling with a boss that didn't really seem that hard. And now the boss was nerfed at some point along the line, so maybe I played it as a nerf boss. But it still seems kind of weird because, like, there's something else going on here that I'm not seeing. And sometimes there's also things where someone can be comparing two characters with almost very, well, I would almost say virtually identical win conditions or what they want to operate. But yet, it's like one is like, oh, this character is so easy and simple to play, whereas the other one is like treated as garbage. So it's just sort of weird in a sense. And now part of this probably comes from being a fan of hero collectors. So it is natural that some of these kind of discussions can be attributed to not having the same tools, roster, whatever, or even which characters has been prioritized. So they just simply aren't available for what content they could have been used for. But how much of it is actually knowledge based? Like, for example, with the boss, I had watched the preview for it. So I actually knew some of the mechanics that the boss would have, so I knew to prepare for that. And that's what I did. I tailored my team according to that and also the rules. And I had that information beforehand, basically, because it gave a highlight of this is kind of the traits you want to bring. So maybe that's why it was simple, because I actually had the tools able to tailor my team for that. But there's also a difference between being told a character's trait and being told the how and why they are great. Yet the first is what is often promoted, possibly because it's simply trickier to say, oh, this character is so great and so amazing, they'll definitely make your time in the game easier. But that also falls into the what to think versus how to think. Because by saying just this character is great, then the emphasis is put on the character. It's not put on how to think about that character. So simply just being like that, it's like, okay, if I put this character in, then everything should problems be resolved. Whereas if you talked about how the character works, then basically everything is almost made a bit it's not really made simpler, but things start to click and the wheels start to churn. It's like, oh yeah, so because of this mechanic or how this character interacts with this mechanic, I know that this character also uses that mechanic or benefits this mechanic, so they work together well, and so on and so forth. So it's one of those things where it's like, once you get into how and why, it starts to really trigger some things and see options rather than just being like, okay, this is the team you need to build and you can use it for anything. That may be true for most cases, but in hero collectors, how they make money is they need to get more heroes, or at least that's how they stay open because they want people to come back and purchase whatever services they offer. So that's kind of the thing is that generally you won't get one tool for every situation. You will probably need more than that. But then it's like, how do you think about it? How do you see what works for what character and so forth? So then it's like, once you know the how and why this character works, then you can think of, okay, how can I make this character better and so forth, or where can I use this character? But in that whole discussion about kind of what is generally promoted is also where the real world and other stories come into play. As it's often so much easier to just say, you need to do this, rather than take the time to communicate why. Because the truth is, there is, oh, wrong one, but there is time. We often don't think it is. We get so caught up in the urgency of something, but it's like, unless like it's a disaster happening or someone is in need of medical attention, there's almost always time to actually communicate why we want someone to do something. And now, again, there may be low trust situations where we don't actually want to communicate something. But in times where there sees actually required, most people can actually understand, and sometimes, but then when it's low trust, then you often or needing to work up to that trust, because then we have this idea that once you're in a position of leadership, you should be obeyed unquestionably. But really, the title of leader is more earned than it is granted or claimed. You kind of need to invest time in showing the people that you actually care for them, that you want the best for them, rather than just being granted the title of leader. So, in a sense, you need to continually invest it whenever you meet someone. If you want to be seen as leader, you need to invest the time to show that you have the respect for them and so forth. And sometimes we didn't see that in stories. Sometimes we just see the one where someone is virtually respected as being a leader. And maybe that's because off screen they've put in the work. But again, it's really interesting to consider. But again, it's like we often have time to communicate why, and that is investment in the relationship. And those investments in relationships are when we're able to do things quicker and so forth, when we actually understand each other. But going back on track, we have my treasure from earlier. Who teaches? And this is important to know because who you are getting info from is filtered by their biases and priorities. So we need to know who we're getting info from, in a sense, because it's their biases and priorities. And again, it's like the game of telephone, where from one end to the other, the whatever message or line given may be completely different. Or it's like a chain of gossip, where a situation has been repeated so many times it's nothing like it actually was. Or it's second-hand accounts rather than actual eyewitnesses, or however you want to put it. So things can be so distorted by everyone's input on it that it no longer resembles what actually happened. And then we see things as we are rather than as they are. And another way this can come up in kind of the value of knowing who is teaching is in the false mentor situations. It's especially good in stories in the sense where a mentor who seems to have been trustworthy or is put in a position of trust by a character is then revealed to have only set them up to fail or betray them at the end. So it can be an interesting story kind of plot twist in a sense. Yet, in addition to who teaches, I also asked who learns. And in a way, this is equally as important, as a learner needs to actually want to learn. There needs to be a desire there. Now, granted, sometimes we may not actually have the time to look up all the details on something. Again, in those emergency situations, there can be times where it's like, okay, we need to just do this or whatever, or just listen to what's going on. Or maybe it's because we just want time off and to have some fun and do a hobby, and so we don't really want to think, we just want to do. So we don't really think about all the beneficial ways to do something. But there's a saying about a teacher appearing when a student is ready. And oftentimes we can be a bit stubborn in doing things our own way. We can almost want to beat our heads against the wall rather than actually trying to go around the wall or learning to go around the wall. Because if we aren't willing to learn, why should we expect to get better at anything? We're just going to keep doing things as we've done. And even just practicing something involves learning hands-on what works and what doesn't. And this is pretty much just acknowledging that there are rules in place of the game. And it's not just what rules people think there are the actual rules for the game. Like there are rules for life, things that help us succeed and things that will deter us. And again, it's easier to think of rules in a game where it's like the win conditions are set, or there might be additional mechanics that benefit us, but it's like there are certain things you can do to progress the game and certain things you can do to wreck your game, and so on and so forth. But it's kind of interesting that once you know those rules, you know what can be done to use them to your advantage. It's like with the law of gravity. Us trying to resist it on our own will just lead us to go back to the ground, or sometimes harder than other times. But the thing is that once you understand gravity, you know how to overcome it in a sense with enough thrust. You know how to make a plane glide, or you know how to launch a spaceship into bases of space outside of the realm of Earth's gravity. So it's like once you understand the rule, you know how to use it and how to make it benefit you and achieve your goals. So that's kind of what I'm doing at here. And so finishing up with that, I actually have an idea for some different style of content. And it would basically be fun showcases of different gameplay that I find interesting and kind of highlights either using the tools you have or the tools you might have, or basically kind of the rules of how something operates rather than just what is always seen as good. So probably just for fun for me in a sense, but also an idea to share and maybe there's some additional value in a different way. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts on that in the comments below, or what are your thoughts on this topic in general. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so that others may enjoy as well. And if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to our channel so that you can see more. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lions Mane Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons learned from them. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.